After the Suns' historic season from not making the playoffs to getting all the way to the finals, things were looking very good for this team. Their star Devin Booker was finally in a winning environment and content. Chris Paul got his bag and was ready to help this team for the next few years. And he helped the big man of this team, Deandre Ayton, get paid.
That man over there, Deandre Ayton, he gonna get him a bag this summer.
Oh wait, now that you mention it, that last one didn't happen, and it could very well end up leading to one of the biggest finesses in NBA history. Today, we have to talk Pheonix Suns and Dallas Mavericks, in particular why the contract extension for Ayton didn't get signed, and why I believe the Mavericks could pull off the big move for Ayton next offseason, along with what the fit around Luka Doncic and the rest of the team would be like, and why this would be the last draw for the Suns that could lead to absolute catastrophe. But before we get into all of that, if you've been enjoying the videos lately, it would be absolutely clutch if you subscribed if you're new and join the Woods crew. We're trying to get past the 10,000 subscriber milestone before the end of the year, and we can definitely hit that goal if everyone who watches the content consistently hits that subscribe button. So if you get any value or entertainment out of the Woods Hoops channel, join the community and drop a sub. But with that being said, let's talk Suns. Like mentioned, this Suns team seemed like they were far from troubling times after their surprise finals run, looking like one of the best and deepest teams in the league. I mean, sure, it hurt to give Chris Paul that big of an extension, but this team had to do it. And other than that, they really had no internal issues heading into the season. Well, that's until the Deandre Ayton contract extension talks began. If you didn't know, Deandre Ayton and the rest of the 2018 draft class were eligible for their contract extensions, and many players in this draft class like Luka Doncic, Trae Young, and even Michael Porter Jr. signed max or near max contracts. The typical estimate for this type of contract for these players is a 5-year, $200+ million deal, and this is exactly what Deandre Ayton wanted to get. A year ago, if you would have even said that Ayton would be in talks for this type of money, people would have called you crazy. But after having a monumental impact in the playoffs run and looking like a legit third option, Ayton was actually obligated to request this type of money. But as you all know, the Suns weren't willing to give it to him, and it might just cost them everything. In my eyes, there are a few reasons why the Suns didn't ink this deal, those being a cheap front office, their value of big men, and Ayton's inconsistency. Starting off with their cheap front office, if you're a Suns fan, you know that the team owner of the Suns, Robert Sarver, has been notorious for being quote-unquote cheap, and not dishing out money just to avoid paying the luxury tax. If this team were rebuilding and had a bad season, I might agree with Sarver in waiting to give Ayton a big deal like that, but the fact that this team was just in the finals makes Sarver's cheapness a whole nother level. If holding off on the Ayton extension is truly because Sarver doesn't want to pay the luxury tax, then well, I have to say, I'm sorry, but this man should not be an NBA owner. As dynasties and super teams have been made over the past few years, it is clear that in order to win a championship or form a team with 3-star caliber players, you need to bite the bullet and go into the tax. But Sarver is yet to display his willingness to do this, which ultimately could cause the Suns to lose Ayton if his cheap attitude carries over to the next offseason. But even though the Sarver situation likely played a role in the Ayton situation, I believe there's no way that this is the only factor, because there are other people involved with this type of thing as well. Personally, I think that this is based around the value of big men in the modern day NBA, and Deandre Ayton's inconsistency as a player. Over the past few years, or even the past decade, it's been clear that the NBA as a whole is shifting in the direction of a guard and forwards league. What I mean by that is big men aren't as valuable as they used to be. It's elite guards and forwards that really determine whether or not a team will be in championship talks. Now obviously there are exceptions to this for some of the most elite big men in the league, but in recent years we've yet to see a team led by a big man win the NBA Finals, which simply proves this point to be correct. Because of the trajectory of the league, many teams are finding it way more appealing to sign rim protecting, lob threat centers on cheap deals, because these guys can still get the job done as a starter compared to someone like Ayton who demands big money. And instead, these teams will invest a lot more money into their guards and forwards, which have proved to be more valuable over time. I mean, let's just take a look at the past 5 NBA champions we've seen in recent years. Last year we have the Bucks, who often ran Brook Lopez at the 5 during their championship run. In 2020, we had the Lakers, who had a mix of guys like Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and similar lob threat centers. In 2019, we had the Raptors with Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, and in all the Warriors years before that, they had bruiser centers like Andrew Bogut and Kevon Looney to play the big man spot. Do you see the common theme here? All of the championship teams I just discussed have serviceable but affordable big men to play at the 5. Sure, they weren't a superstar center, but they had the skills to do what the team needed them to do: get boards, catch lobs, and protect the rim. Because of this, I see why the Suns don't want to pay Ayton big money that the guards are getting, because, well, they're simply more valuable to a team and there is no way around it. But even though this is the case, I still think it's the Suns' fault. In 2019, the league was about the same as it is right now, and everyone including the Suns knew that big men were losing their value, and star centers weren't what they needed to get a championship. Despite this, the team still took Ayton with the first pick, knowing that they'd have to pay him a lot of money in a few years if he panned out. Now I know, Ayton was the clear-cut #1 pick at the time, but if the Suns had no intentions of giving a big man that kind of money, why would they draft him in the first place? Why not go for a guard like Trae or Luka? It's definitely an interesting situation to think about, but getting into the last possible reason for not offering the max, we have Ayton's consistency, or should I say inconsistency. Like I said, many believed heading into the 2021 playoffs that Deandre Ayton wasn't going to be the monster that he ended up being. His regular season stats somewhat looked the same as his previous season and were pretty underwhelming, even with the addition of Chris Paul. But to everyone's surprise, Ayton was able to step up and look like a max contract big man in the playoffs. Despite this, the Suns might have still been reluctant to give him the max because of the sample size of him playing like a star, because really it was only in one playoff run, which is not a lot of time. There's a good chance that the team gave him a decent offer, expecting him to decline, and plan to see how he does this season to see if he's worthy of a max. If he dominates, then great, they get a star big man on a max deal. If he struggles, still good for the Suns, because they can offer him a cheaper deal and save money compared to if they would have given him a max deal right now. Enough of why this deal didn't go down though, let's instead talk about what could happen because of this lack of agreement between Ayton and the Suns. Because of the fact that the Suns weren't able to strike a deal, this means that Ayton will enter free agency next year as a restricted free agent. Due to this being the case, the Suns will have the ability to match any deal that Ayton is offered. But if they still don't want to give him the max and another team offers him one, there's a good chance that he walks for nothing. Which team would be the best to offer him a max contract though? Well, despite the fact that Ayton might not be worth the max money, I believe that a lot of teams would be willing to overpay, due to the lack of potential star free agents that will be on the market next summer. Zach LaVine and a couple of other names are really the only game changers, so there will most definitely be teams highballing Ayton. The best team, you might ask? Well, I have to say, the Dallas Mavericks, because if they snagged Ayton, it would be one of the biggest finesses in NBA history. Everyone knows by now that in the 2018 draft, the Suns passed on 2 all-star guards in Trae Young and Luka Doncic. But since entering the league, Luka has shown more than all-star caliber talent. He's shown transcendent, once-in-a-generation type abilities on the offensive end of the ball. If the Mavericks were able to sign Ayton without giving up anything, it would be the ultimate finesse, because they got the superstar originally and get the #1 pick. Not only would this be a great story, but I believe that Ayton would be a great fit alongside Luka Doncic. A lob threat rebounding machine that can also be a defensive anchor that this team needs badly. Sounds like a match made in heaven to me. The fit isn't a question for the Mavericks. The real question is, will they be able to make the money work and bring in the big man that's on the same timeline as Luka? Well, this is where things get tricky, because at the moment things look good, but next year Luka Doncic's max contract kicks in, and to say the least, it will clog up the cap for the Mavericks. This team does have about $10 million in expiring deals, but it's hard to say if they'd be able to clear another $20 million to get the space they need for Ayton while also keeping Kristaps Porzingis. Don't get me wrong here, it is possible, but the Mavericks need to assess what players they want to keep on their roster after the season's over. In my eyes, the best way to make the money work for this team would be if they traded away Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber for draft capital or small contracts to clear the cap. These players combined are making about $20 million a year, so if they are traded away, it would make enough room for Ayton and the Luka Doncic contract, being that the Mavs are still $18 million under the tax right now. Ayton would replace Powell, so that'd be smart to get rid of him anyways, and even though I like Kleber, I think it'd be a good price to pay to get Ayton. For a potential star center, I have to say, I think this is well worth it for the Mavs. Not to mention, it would give them a big three in Luka, Porzingis, and Ayton to keep their generational talent happy in Dallas, which has been a small concern over the past year. All in all, I have to say, the Deandre Ayton fit would be interesting on the Mavericks to say the least. And if the Suns big man does leave because they're too cheap to give him a deal, I think it would be the last straw for this team, and maybe even cause players like Devin Booker to get upset and demand out. The Suns are in a good spot now, but don't let that fool you, because losing stars is a slippery slope, and one mistake could lead to the collapse of the entire team they spent years building up. If you're still watching the video, chances are you enjoyed it, and if that's the case, it would be greatly appreciated if you subscribed if you're new and join the Wiz crew, to help me go full-time making videos. I was thinking about making a video on why Kristaps Porzingis is going to prove everyone wrong this year. So Mavericks fans, let me know if you'd like to see that one, and if this video gets a good amount of love, I'll do it. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Woods out.